agenda. I know that we have a few people listening in, and I welcome them. And so they know who's here. I'm just going to go through a quick introduction. My name is Pat Kimball. I am the current interim chair of the Maine Recovery Council. Uh, Paul,
I'm Paul Vinsel. I'm addiction medicine physician with Spurwing and a
Gordon,
member of the Recovery Council.
Gordon,
Gordon Smith, I'm the state's director of opioid response, and I'm one of Governor Mills' two appointees to the Recovery Council.
thank you. Betsy,
I'm Betsy Fitzgerald, representing the litigating subdivisions and current, I guess, interim secretary of the council.
Brendan,
I'm Brendan O'Neill. I'm Assistant Attorney General in the AG's office, and I am not a member of the Recovery Council.
Katrina,
I'm Katrina Bonish. I'm with the Attorney General's office and also not a member of the council.
Mary,
Good morning. I'm Mary Coyne. I'm the coordinator for the council. Also not a member.
Grayson,
Hi, my name is Grayson. I'm with the AG's office and also not a member of the Recovery Council.
Joe, could you please introduce yourself?
Yes. Good morning, everyone. Joe Everett, the CEO of the Opportunity Alliance here in South Portland, a member of the council. Good to see everyone. Happy New Year.
Okay, thank to you, Joe. All right, I think I got everybody. As I said, welcome to those who are listening in, and we appreciate your support. Because everything is sort of up in the air and starting over with the new 2-year terms. I can either serve as temporary chair of the governance committee for this meeting, but note that after a new chair is elected, there'll be new committees and new chairs that will be appointed and voted on by the council. So unless somebody else has an urge to chair this meeting, I can do that and we will proceed in the meeting.
So moved if you need a motion.
I don't even think I need a motion as long as we have a consensus.
I don't think you do either. It was tongue in cheek.
We're so happy, Pat, that you want to do it.
I don't know. I haven't had a good morning. I'm on my third computer device trying to upload a Zoom.
Oh, yes.
And then for some reason it asked me the password and I'm like, I don't know the password. I'll tell you the new story of my new phone and the guy looking at me saying, what's my password? It was a long, painful process. Anyways, okay. So the agenda for this meeting really is simple. We're going to look at the nominees we have, make sure that we are in agreement of a process to that, and then any other business that the members feel come before the governance meeting. I don't know if you have other agenda items. Please feel you're free to speak right now, but that's what I have on the agenda.
I at the end, I just wanted to, I didn't have a chance to check the bylaws myself, that it's a question that Brendan, I think, can easily answer, but my recollection with respect to the at-large members of the executive committee, that's not part of really today's meeting, as I understand it, because the new permanent chair gets to pick some at-large members that are then ratified by the full council. But my question was, is there a limit? Is it one? Is it two? Is it as many as you want? That was my question. I didn't get a chance to drag out the bylaws to check that myself.
I think it's up to 3, but Brendan, I'll lean to you for that. But I think it's up to 3.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay.
So in other words, up to 3 at-large at-large members.
And presently in the past council, was I the only at-large member?
No.
Who was the second one?
Eric.
Oh, yes. Okay. Excellent. Okay. Well, great.
Yeah. We only had 2 last time.
Great. Because if there is interest, I mean, we got a lot to do, and I think 2, even 3 would not be out of the question. I'd like to be one of them, but I understand if Dr. Vinsel has any interest in that, I'd be wildly enthusiastic about him joining me as a at-large member of the executive committee of the new council, if that finds favor with
Yep.
whoever the chair is. So I won't mention it again. I just wanted it in my mind to understand that, and we should let people know that they can solicit, they can communicate with the chair any interest about that. Thanks.
Yeah, yeah, you're right, Gordon. We do have a busy year coming with us. Not only do we have massive amounts of contracts to deal with, but we're also looking at sort of restructuring ourselves, bringing on new staff and help. And so the executive committee will be part of that, in interviewing people and getting that process moving. So there will be a lot to do, and many hands makes light work. Although sometimes 15 members makes it a little challenging. All right. So thank you. Any other comments before we go through the list of how? All right. So what I did was, oh, thanks, Paul. What I did was that all the members received an email from me asking them to either place themselves in nomination or place someone else's name in nomination for an office. And I also asked them, whoever they asked, to make sure that if they nominated somebody, that person was aware of being nominated. I don't know if you've ever been blindsided that way, but it's sometimes you're in a meeting, all of a sudden somebody's nominating you for an office, you didn't even want it, and it becomes awkward. So all of the people's names placed in nomination agreed, if they were elected, to serve. And the only person's name mentioned as chair was myself. Then I'm going to go through the easy ones. Treasurer was Ben. Secretary was Betsy. And then we had 3 nominations for the vice chair, which were Bruce Nodden, Chastity Toole, and Melissa Hackett. And unless somebody else got emailed that I didn't, those are the only emails I saw with names in nomination.
That's all I ever saw.
Okay.
So can I ask a question, Pat? Do we know that each of those nominees were consulted and agreed to serve if elected?
Yes.
Okay.
Tess nominated both Chastity and Melissa, and she said that they agreed to serve. And I think it was you, Gordon, who spoke to Bruce.
Yes, I did.
Okay. So we know that all 3 of them do. So the last election, what we did was each one of those positions was placed in nomination. The nominations were verbal. And so I'm assuming, unless someone feels otherwise, there's nothing in the bylaws that says how we are to vote. But it was a choice of the council for the past 2 years to vote out loud and in person, not on a secret ballot. So I'm just asking people out there if that's how you want to proceed for the next meeting, to do that same way.
So question again. So the governance committee, are we presenting then these nominations as it's not our role today then to pick one of those 3 people and present a slate. We're just basically today formally voting as a governance committee to present these nominations for a full vote of the council next Thursday. Okay, and I mean, while I've got the floor, I mean, I don't see any reason. It was kind of a big deal to, when we decided to vote, not have a secret ballot, but to vote, on the record for each person, and I don't really know that there's a compelling reason to change that. Frankly, probably do it the same way we did it before. Yeah, it's fine. I mean, I think the process would include, for instance, for any contested election, we might give the nominees a moment to introduce themselves and say why they'd like to have the position. I think that particularly where one of the new members is interested or willing to be nominated. So, I mean, I think that could be the process. We present the nominations. Any candidate has an opportunity to speak for 3 minutes or less, and then presumably Grayson calls the roll and we vote.
Yeah,
Right.
I think that's what we did last time. We gave everybody, I think, 3 minutes. I think Brendan has his hand up.
Yeah, just briefly to be the lawyer for a minute. The language in the bylaws says that this committee is to solicit, prepare, and submit recommendations to the council for election at the annual meeting, a slate of nominees. The word recommendations is probably a carryover from template that I looked at from some other entity. I'll leave it to the council to decide, or this group to decide whether you want to be in the position of making recommendations. Especially where you have multiple nominees for the same position. And I simply flag it just so you know what the language says. And it wouldn't it would be reasonable if this committee you know in the future looked at making various changes to the bylaws, chose to delete the word recommendations, and to take a more neutral role in submitting a slate of nominees. But, I just want to flag it, and that's for the committee to decide how it wants to handle that. You could also, forward the names without a recommendation, or, take the position that you're not making a recommendation about particular candidates, I think.
Other people's thoughts.
A point of clarity. So as I look at the slate, and thank you, Gordon, for raising the kind of large members. So I'm not sure there's necessarily a recommendation necessary this time, because there'll be an elected process for the vice chair role, and the other roles are uncontested as of this moment. So can people submit? Are we done, Pat? Like, will we take nominations tomorrow? Or are we going into the meeting with I can't use the word slate. I know they're not officially the slate, but the list will go into next Thursday's meeting as it is right now. Is that correct?
So I can't remember. I had that same question, Joe, I know that I think I gave a cutoff date to people to submit to me the names that we would go over and get a procedure done and submit the procedure. But I don't remember, and I don't know whether somebody else does, whether we took nominations from the floor or only took from the nominations that came before the governance committee. Because we had contested positions before.
I think you opened the door by saying, are there any other nominations? But nobody spoke up. That's my recollection.
So should we again, as a governance, are we recommending that I say that we will take nominations from the floor?
My recollection is that we did review that question relative to the bylaws, and that the bylaws were silent. Now, Brendan will have to help me here. It just seems to me like we did discuss it, and that the conclusion might have been that the bylaws are silent on the matter. but then I don't remember whether we decided that we could in fact take nominations or not. I almost think we might have decided that we couldn't because the bylaws call if the bylaws call for the governance committee to in fact present these nominees, then there is not a in the I don't want to play lawyer. I really don't. So,
You don't have to play one, Gordon. You really are one.
it does make sense to me that the bylaws being silent on the matter, then there isn't that it's likely to be a stronger legal case that we don't have the authority to take nominations from the floor because the bylaws say that the nominations will come through the governance committee.
Correct. It does state that, and Brennan probably has the bylaws in front of him. It does state that the governance committee will submit names placed in nomination 30 days before the annual meeting. We waived that 30 days because of timeframes for this one. We voted on it at the last meeting to waive the 30 days because we just couldn't make it happen. But the bylaws state that the council members are to receive the names placed in nomination by the governance committee 30 days prior to the annual meeting. And by the way, welcome, Tess. Sorry you had some technical difficulty. Brendan, am I right with that?
Well, before I answer, I want to see if Paul wants to jump in on
Okay.
this, if that's why his hand is up.
Oh, I didn't see it. Sorry.
I can't remember. I can't remember exactly why I had my hand up before, but it would seem to me that if the bylaws say the governance committee will present the slate for the offices, we didn't waive that. We only waived the 30 days.
Correct.
So,
yeah, you are correct.
So though I'd like to see, I really love the idea of giving people opportunities. I think the bylaws, I think we would go against the bylaws. But I'm not a lawyer. I can only play doctor.
So I'm happy to, I'll speak to this for a second, but I want to give Tess an opportunity to introduce herself, if she wants it.
Hey, Tess.
Hey, sorry, I am a millennial, but I'm not technologically savvy. So like doing a Zoom call on my phone is like highly overwhelming. I'm Tess Parks. I'm the policy director for Maine Recovery Advocacy Project. Happy to be here. And my one question in the chat on this is during the last elections, was anyone nominated from the floor?
I don't believe so.
No.
Yes.
Oh, someone was nominated.
Yeah, we nominated from the floor last time.
Okay.
Did we nominate anybody, Joe?
Yeah. I remember because I think it feels like we amended the bylaws even, but so we had Gordon, Bruce Nodden was nominated from the floor, wasn't he? Courtney?
No.
I think I had heard that Bruce had been nominated from the floor.
Okay.
That was the process went on for a while.
You know what?
It might not have been the first day when Pat, you were sworn in, so to speak, but I think because that particular role did not get filled for a few months, the vice chair roles, I should
Well, that could be.
Yeah,
Right.
you know
That's
what?
right.
You're triggering a memory here.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
but
memory is that no candidate nominated by the governance committee at the initial meetings received the requisite number of votes to be elected. And so we left it vacant for a few months or a couple of meetings, and then we had subsequent election. But I think that the governance committee met and nominated people for that second election. And at one time, it came up as to whether or not a nomination could come from the floor instead of those two candidates. And I thought that we had a discussion about that and concluded that, in fact, No, I mean, the names needed to come through the governance committee. But again, it was a while ago. You know, I'm old. My memory may not be as good as some of yours, but that's my recollection.
So I would just say for me, where I stand and why I want to be on this committee is that if possible, I think surprises are not, I think nominating from the floor, but not the legislature. I think we need to work together, as Gordon and Pat pointed out. We have a lot of hard work. Pat, you've sent out several emails, so I would like us to go in. I'm hoping we can go in next week with the list of folks that have expressed interest, have been talked to, but I know that isn't necessarily the political process. But I think for the good of the cause and the group, the less sort of disruption, so to speak, might be in our best interest.
Yep, I agree. Other thoughts on that?
Pat, I would just agree with the suggestions that because the bylaws do articulate a process for nominations, that is the process to follow. And because it doesn't include nominations from the floor, that's another reason that I would support not including it from the floor.
Okay. I think, Paul?
Um, this is a slightly different subject, but if we have three people that have put their names in for vice chair, if one of them does not get the requisite number of votes, how do we handle that? Do we do like a ranked choice thing, or do we eliminate the lower one and revote? I think we're going to need to come up with a plan for that.
So if you remember right, when we voted for vice chair one time, we didn't have enough members because people abstained. And what we had to do, if I'm remembering this right, what we had to do was go back to the governance committee and figure something out. And at that point, we recommended two vice chairs to resolve the issue. But what we did was, because we didn't have enough votes, neither candidate, neither nominee got enough votes. So it went back to governance. Governance decided to split the position, which was why Courtney and Bruce both were vice chair, brought that recommendation back to the full council, and they voted on that. And I think that's the way it went. And somebody please chime in and correct me if my old brain is wrong.
I think that's right, but I think that Paul raises an excellent question that Brendan can hopefully just research before next Thursday as to whether the bylaws would call for that third candidate, the lowest vote receiving candidate, to then drop out, and then we would have a vote for the remaining two candidates. Otherwise, we could quickly have an impasse, and none of the three maybe would get the requisite 3/5 vote that we need. And so, I mean, I assume I'm hoping that's what the process would be, but I don't know what the bylaws, whether the bylaws are silent on that question, or whether I don't know how we'd resolve that.
Yeah, the bylaws are silent, other than saying, that the council acts by consensus or barring that 3/5 vote. So, in terms of the officer positions, it simply says, the relevant officer shall be elected. And if a particular candidate is able to achieve a 3/5 vote, arguably, I would think the same people who voted for that candidate would not therefore vote for other candidates, and that would resolve the election. But I mean, it's silent on how to handle the election of multiple candidates.
So perhaps we could, by motion, let's just assume that we have a vote for vice chair and that none of the three candidates receive a 3/5 majority. Then we could have potentially a motion for to delete the candidate that received the least number of votes and to revote just the two top candidates, and that would be sounds like that would be permissible to break the impasse. So I guess what I'd be saying, Brendan, is that we can make it up as we go along, as a matter of public record. I mean, that's a logical way to resolve it. There's other ways that could be resolved, but the other thing that would be even faster is if the candidate that received the least number of votes simply dropped out. But it could be resolved by either one of those methods.
I mean, that sounds fine to me, so long as, either it's a dropout or it's a motion.
Yeah.
And again, just to review the position, in this particular case of multiple candidates, the position is vice chair, and that role is to perform such duties as are assigned to them by the chair and the council. Or in the absence of the chair, the vice chair shall perform the duties of the office of the chair. So the role, I simply want to, just mention how the role is described, because I don't know if that that may influence the committee's recommendation to the council about whether it sees a need or room for co-chairs or co-vice chairs, and whether it's two or three. I think it's up to you about whether that becomes unmanageable, and gets into issues about asking one versus another to do various tasks. But you ought to probably consider the role before you bring the recommendation in.
Okay. So remind me one more time. So I'm going to make sure I have it straight. So in voting to get a 3/5, if I abstain, that number doesn't count in the 3/5 to obtain it. Am I saying that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Your vote, so abstentions do not affect, are not
3/4.
included in the count of votes.
So if there's 10 people there, one abstains, then it's really, we're counting the
3/5
3/5 out of 9.
Correct.
Not the 10. Okay. I just wanted to make sure that I understood that.
Pat, I'd like to answer Tessa's question in the chat. She asked about nominations for the at-large positions. And we talked about it a little bit, Tess, while you were trying to get on the call. These are not positions nominated through the governance committee. These are nominated directly by the chair and then are ratified by the full council. So we can't get to the issue of 1, 2, or 3 at-large members until there's a new chair elected. And then presumably between that meeting, or maybe right at that meeting, he or she can make that. Well, I guess we only got one candidate. I guess it would be she can make that decision as to who she'd like to nominate for the one or more of the at-large positions, and then it would have to be ratified by the council.
During the process of staffing committees, that is.
Correct. So at the same time that we put people on committees and appoint chairs for committees, the at-large recommendation comes from the chair. But again, the full council has to vote on the recommendation from the chair.
Thank you for that clarification. So I was just thinking, if there are 3 people interested in stepping up for leadership, and obviously 3 people can't take on that role, it might just, I think if people are motivated and want to show initiative and are willing to serve, any way we can do that, I think would be helpful.
Yeah, I think so, Tess. I agree. When people want to be involved and they want to get, do the work, I should encourage them to do so. I mean, it's a equal partnership, the 15 members of the council. So we want to be able to make sure that people get to use their talents and feel comfortable. But again, as you can see before us, there will be lots of committee work done. The committees will be very active, including this committee. Um, there will be a lot of work with governance committee this year. I think we've learned in the past 2 years, things that we need to tighten up, things that we need to change, and the governance committee certainly will be a big piece of that. So, okay, so let me
Can
sort
I
of,
just ask a question
yeah.
of probably it's just you and Gordon at this point. I'm kind of on the fence of around three vice chairs, but I also was in an executive committee and as a board person who manages boards. Do you all think that that's because that's like almost half the groups in the executive committee. So is that valuable to what's the value? Is it needed as former executive committee members, just for the good of the cause? If you guys could share your thoughts about that, if you're willing.
So I can tell you that some of the difficulty for me as a past chair and having two vice chairs is according to your bylaws, three committee members together is a meeting, which means it has to be public. It has to go out on a notice. It makes it difficult. And one of the things that if I could have changed anything was I would have liked the vice chair to be very much a part of some of the conversations that the chair has on a weekly basis with Mary. But if I brought on both vice chairs, that constituted a meeting, which constituted a 14-day notice, which constituted having public. And that was one of the things that was difficult is that rule that you have. We've talked about removing that number. But again, I would like to see the vice chair more active in being part of Mary's weekly calls. I think that only for sustainability, for um, um, succession planning of the board and all of that, I think that works well. Um, but again, that was my only thing. And then again, it really wasn't defined what the vice chair would do. So then you had two people not really defining what their roles were. So that was my only thing that I saw, and I don't know how Gordon feels about it, but that was mine.
I have no opinion on that. I was just thinking that, one of the issues that came up in the previous election was that there was, knowing that there are other people observing our work this morning, as they usually are, that I think it's important for people to know that we still have, that there was a feeling that some of the officers, one or more, should be people with lived experience, and we still have, despite the change in the group, I can confidently say we still have four people with known lived experience that, and that that I that was also an additional reason to have one or more candidates, one or more vice chairs.
Correct.
So I think I really don't have an opinion on how many vice chairs we should have, but I think we all share Tessa's opinion that, and confirmed by the chair, by Pat, that anybody that's interested in doing more, serving on more committees, doing more work, we would want to embrace that. And it's nice to know that we have that ability at the meeting on the 9th. If we decide that, well, we actually don't need an election, we'd like to have two or three vice chairs, we have the ability to do that if that's our decision.
Thank you. I agree with you both. And Pat, I do think it's hard when you cannot do what you need to do with Mary with that restriction. And I agree with you, Gordon. I think lived experience is critical.
Yep.
So
And
thank you.
yeah, it absolutely needs to be a balance. We need to make sure that all the voices are there, and people with lived experience certainly need to be able to be there. So okay, so this is what I'm hearing so far. So what I'm hearing so far is that we will vote shortly on accepting the names that have been placed in nomination, that we will present to the full council. We will, before the vote of each individual office, what we will do is we will allow people up to about 3 to 4 minutes to share with the group, if they want to, why they want that position and their expertise, a little bit about themselves, that if they want to share with the group. And then we will take a vote out loud. It won't be a secret ballot. It'll be a public ballot. And at this point, per the bylaws, we won't be taking nominations but the floor, but we could have a conversation about it if the council strongly agreed. Is that where we are?
Yes.
Okay.
Just for clarification, when you're taking the vote, because there's now 3 candidates for that position, consider the order in which you want to take the vote. Maybe it's alphabetical. And to the extent that and I can, I'm happy to make this suggestion in the council meeting, to the extent the council decides it wants to take nominations from the floor, I guess my recommendation at this point would be that the council should, vote to make that change to the bylaws, rather than do the nomination from the floor at the time.
Okay.
Send it back to this committee, because this committee is the one that works on, bylaws.
Correct. Yeah, we can do that. So, although strangely enough, and I don't know how anybody else saw the vote, sometimes my brain is going, I was foreseeing that the vote for vice chair, literally when it came my time to vote, I would say one of these 3 names versus not go through the entire council on each one of those votes, yes or no. Am I the only one that's thinking that way?
No, I agree with you, Pat.
Yeah.
Okay. So if it came time to say, Pat Kimball, I would vote Bruce or Haley or Melissa. I would say one of those 3 names, and we would keep a tally at that point. Am I correct in that thinking?
That sounds right to me.
All right. That way we don't have to. All right.
Okay, stop. Can you just stop there for a second? Let me say what I think I heard you say.
That's frightening, Betsy, but go ahead.
No, well, I'm supposed to have this accurate. So your plan is to say for vice chair, Bruce Nodden, and we're going to vote that. And if Bruce gets 3/5, you're not going to go any further.
No, I was saying that the motion from the floor would be that it would be Bruce Nodden, Chastity Toole, Melissa Hackett, and when you came time to vote, you would say one of those 3 names.
Okay. All right.
That's only me. Anyone? That was just what I was thinking.
All right. No, I just that's not what I understood. So thank
Okay.
you.
And at that point, it would be whichever candidate got 3/5 of whoever was present. If all 15 were present, then it would be the 3/5 of the 15 members.
I think that's the most common way that it would be done. After all, if we had a paper ballot, we'd have 3 names on a ballot,
Right.
and we'd say at the top, vote for one.
Yep.
So all we're doing is an oral presentation of that paper ballot.
Yep.
Vote for one. Here's your 3 candidates.
That's what I was thinking. All right. Okay. All right. So what I'm looking for from the council at this point is I'm looking for a motion that we send to the full council the recommended nominee for the offices, which are for Chair Pat Kimball, Vice Chair would be Bruce Nunn, Chastity Toole, Melissa Hackett. For Treasurer would be Ben Mann, and Secretary would be Betsy Fitzgerald.
I make that motion.
Seconded.
It's been moved and seconded. Grayson, any other discussion? Sorry. Grayson, can you call a vote, please?
Yes, quickly, I want to confirm, Gordon, were you the second?
Yes, I was.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right, Pat Kimball,
Yes.
Gordon Smith,
Yes.
Tess Parks,
Yes.
Joe Everett,
Yes.
Paul Vinsel,
Yes.
Betsy Fitzgerald.
Yes.
We turn your camera on.
We have to see you, Betsy.
Yep.
Thank
So,
you.
Okay.
Thank you.
yes.
There
Thank
he is.
All right. So we have the nominations. I'll make sure I'll try to get that email out today. Then we have a process that we'll do. It'll be the first thing in the meeting. And then we will go from there. Sound like a plan?
Yep.
All right. Other business before the committee. All right.
Excuse me, Pat, can I just
Yeah.
make one comment and remind
Yeah.
people to please refrain from using the chat because it is not
That's right.
recorded.
Thank you, I had that on my list because I saw your thing. For those who don't know, when you go in the chat and use the chat, that information cannot be recorded, nor does the public see it. So again, to have full disclosure, if you use the chat limitedly, it would be appreciated.
Can't we just, isn't it possible to just turn off that function?
The only reason not, because sometimes it's helpful, like for instance, if somebody's having technical difficulty,
Okay.
or something, it's a way to communicate. But we can turn it off, I think, can't we, Katrina?
I believe so, and I can look into it. But again, it is one of those things that if I need to shoot, say, Pat a message to say, hey, don't forget, then we would all lose that function to be able to do that.
Yeah. And sometimes people leave early, say, I'm sorry, I'm leaving early. So there are some reasons to do it. What we don't want in the chat is relative information that the public should hear.
Right.
And that
Okay.
it's recorded. It's because it's not recorded in any way. So, but it does have a function, particularly for old women who forget things and they get reminders. I don't know who that is. All right. Any other business to come before the committee? Paul?
Pat, I'm not sure if this is the correct committee to say this, but at the public forum, there were several people who suggested that we have more public input.
Mhm.
And I recently spoke at the Lewiston City Council meeting, and the way they do it is after they have the Pledge of Allegiance, they have 15 minutes for public comment. And each person is given 3 minutes to say whatever they want to say. And it stops at 3 minutes. They cut me off. I still had a couple of minutes to go. I didn't talk fast enough. But I thought it was really good because everyone who spoke at the public from the public had talked about different subjects. But I thought it was really good, and I'd like to see the Recovery Council do that on a regular basis, maybe every meeting.
Yeah, the Penobscot County Commissioners do the same thing, and that gavel stops the minute that time ends. In fairness to them and for the City Council of Lewiston, they have business that they need to get through, so they do. Paul, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it will be governance that will discuss that issue within the next year, so they can come up with parameters and rules and how it will work. We also have to look into the technology of it as to how that all works. But I believe that change in the way we do a public comment will come from governance. So that will be part of the work of the governance committee next year, is to come up with some rules and regulations around it. And I mean, even guidelines. I think the Penobscot County has guidelines about use of language, um, uh, respect kind of things, and give some leeway to that. So, Gordon.
Well, I just want to endorse what Paul has said. A lot of the state licensing boards, I regularly attend, for instance, the Board of Pharmacy meetings, and they commit to time at the end of each meeting for public comment, and if necessary, limit it to, usually there's none. But this shouldn't be that big a deal. I think we discussed it months and months ago. I think at that time, we felt that we had so much administrative work to do and we'd had a public hearing. Now we've had two public hearings, that we chose not to do so at that time. But I think now, with everything in front of us, that we should really be able to accommodate a brief public comment period at every meeting. And I don't see why we can't discuss that, put it on the agenda for January 9th, and start it virtually immediately at the February meeting. So I just agree with Paul that it's quite common. I think we've had our 2 years. Now we've got a new council. We've got a lot in front of us still, but I think committing a short period of time for public comments, um, I I think we'll get some, but I don't think we'll be overwhelmed by it. If we feel that way, we can change it. Now Brenda's probably going to tell some reasons.
I just got his hand up. You're in trouble
That.
now, Gordon.
But anyway, I just endorse what Paul had said, and I think we should do it sooner as opposed to later.
I do.
No, I'm not gonna, Gordon, I'm the one who with a more expansive view of FOA. I support public comment and, transparency. No, just as part of that earlier discussion you referenced, Gordon, from months ago, part of the consideration, I believe, was also the fact that the public can always email the council 24/7 at the council's email address, which I believe Katrina and Grayson might correct me if I'm mistaken, but I believe it's on all of the council's agendas. It's certainly in multiple places on the council's website. And that's not meant to take away from the value of a public comment period. It's more in addition to kind of thing. And it may be worth, Pat, a reminder to the public from time to time that they can do that, take advantage of
that. Thank you. Tess?
Thanks, Pat. Is the full council able to get copies of everything that's sent to the council email?
I see Grayson's raising his hand there.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that right now it goes to me, Katrina, Brendan, and Mary. Because at the moment, not a lot of stuff, questions for the council are coming to the inbox. It's mostly administrative stuff, like working on contracts and those types of things. But when that type of stuff does come into the inbox, Mary forwards it to the full council.
Thank you.
So I like the idea too. Can I just say, Pat, I'm going to just sort of kind of continue. I know I'm going to say the obvious, but it's really important. And it's what I'm hearing from people. We need to get the money out. We have contracts, Pat, you started the meeting. So I think that has to be prioritized. I'm all about public comment and hearing voices. I think that public is looking at us to get out the money. So I know it's the obvious, but I think it's maybe some of the work that we'll do in this committee. But I think that's what's on people's mind right now.
You're absolutely right that the contracts, and again, as a full council, we will discuss that. But right now, because your comments are going to be people frustrated with the council because contracts aren't being sent. It's one thing to award the money, but it's not okay to spend years trying to get that money to people. That's not how it needs to be. But I 100% agree with Joe. Grayson, Katrina, or Mary or somebody shortly, because I don't want to keep people past an hour, but is technically doing this a difficult thing to do?
Not really. I think it would be a little bit harder over Zoom, like to take public comment on Zoom, but I know that I'm pretty sure that Katrina has done that before and knows how to do that.
So public comment over Zoom is a very, very simple thing to do.
Okay, awesome.
So it is not difficult at all.
Cool.
Okay. There's the technical question that I can never answer. Because that, again, that's what we just need to be able to do is to be able to figure that out. So, Katrina, if you know how to do that, I'd appreciate for the next meeting if we have that up for on discussion. If you be prepared to be able to tell people that, I'd appreciate that.
Yep, I can
Um,
absolutely do that. There is a little bit of a process, but it is not huge. It's just everybody making sure that they follow directions.
okay. Well, there's
I know, I
that may
know.
be a little tricky there, the following directions thing.
Pat, can I chime in and add one point to what Tess brought up regarding the info inbox? So Tess, this has been something that has come up a couple times with the council, and I think back in the summer, I polled everyone to see if they wanted to receive emails as they came in, or if folks didn't want that and they wanted it just once a month. And the majority of the council at that time didn't want, their inbox to be spammed with, as Grayson mentioned, a lot of administrative things. But starting this month, so we have record from 2025 on, and we can sort of retroactively go back and save other files, but I'm going to create a Dropbox folder like we did with the public testimony comments, so that you all can access that at any point, and we'll have that saved by month. So if you're interested to see what we've received prior to a council meeting, you can have access to that. So I'll make sure that's set up too.
Awesome. Thank you, Mary.
All right. Okay, any other business to come before the council, before the governance committee?
I did want to just respond briefly to Joe. I know we've got four or 5 minutes left. Because it's a very important issue, and I want Joe and others that are on the council to know that we're very much thinking about it, have been working over the holidays on it, and have some plans that we will bring to the executive committee on Tuesday. Is that Monday or Tuesday? When's executive committee next week?
Monday.
Monday.
So, a couple examples, Joe. We do have a very important meeting with the Attorney General and Brendan today, myself, Pat, and Mary. Secondly, I took it upon myself to group the 43 new projects into categories that I thought made sense, because we immediately need to prioritize where do we even begin with those once we finish up the existing contracts that were voted in March, April, and last December. And I think the situation is quite acute, and it's not the fault of a person or a group of people. It's the system. And now that we've had 2 years of experience with that system, we can see what's gone well and what needs to be fixed and accelerated. I think some things need to be done immediately. I think other things we really need to discuss over the almost the 2 years of the council. For instance, the degree of independence that we might want to achieve from the Attorney General's office, which couldn't be done without, frankly, changing both the MOUs in the court system and changing the legislation. Again, this is not meant to point any fingers. Certainly at the AG's office, we couldn't have gotten nearly as far as we have without their assistance. But I do think that the fact that the Attorney General's office is a third party to our contracts is a complicating factor. Now, again, that's not a short-term issue. That's a really long-term issue, because each time that we've come up against the issue of, well, we'd like to change this, when we know that it's going to require a change in not only the statute, but the MOUs, and that we can't change the MOUs without going back to the lawyers for the subdivisions, it's really Apparently my computer's not plugged in. I'm sorry. Let me do that quickly. Um,
Gordon, I have to jump, but thank you for raising that. Please, please, no one take what I said as a criticism. You know, I
No.
really respect everyone and I know how hard everyone's working. I was just sort of speaking on behalf of the people. So thank you, Gordon. But I
Yep.
really have to head to another meeting. So
Yep.
Gordon, are you
Want
good?
you to
Can
know
I?
we're working on it.
Yeah, no, and
You're
I know,
working on it,
Gordon, I
Joe.
definitely was being critical. Please, please know that. I know everyone works really hard. So see you guys soon. Sorry, I
All
gotta run.
right. Thank you,
Thanks,
Joe.
Bye.
Joe.
All right. Any other business to come before the committee? All right. Well, I thank you for all of the work that you do, as usual. I will see some of you this afternoon, some of you Monday, and all of you Thursday. Thank you all. Enjoy your weekends.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.